I would like to call to order the City of Saugatuck City Council Workshop for February 8th, 2023. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Baldwin.
Here.
Muncy.
Here.
Leo.
Here.
Dean.
Here.
Stanton.
Here.
Gardner.
Here.
Lewis.
Councilmember Lewis is online and I would excuse her. And can I have a motion to excuse her from this workshop?
So moved. Second.
Motion Baldwin, second Stanton. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. That takes us to number 3, agenda changes. Does any member of council have any changes they would like to make to the agenda? Hearing none. That takes us to item 4, our guest speaker, Dan Fox, Saugatuck Township Fire District Board. Dan, I think you have a video to tee up for us. So I think Jamie has it ready.
Not really a guest speaker. I don't intend to speak, but I would say this is what we hope to have had ready for the last meeting. Technical reasons and whatever kept that from being the case. It is a much shorter version of what was shown at the fire district's appreciation dinner for the firefighters. And we asked that it be put together to share, not just with you guys, but with the entire community. It's on the fire district website on the landing page. So and it's here to see. The only thing I'd say in advance of this is, and I've watched this several times, you might imagine going to work in the morning, tomorrow morning, and facing what's on this video, what these guys potentially face literally every time the stupid phone rings. I mean, it is, you talk about public service, this is serious public service. And you can tell this is like 5 minutes long. Wasn't hard putting this together. There's a lot more than this that could have been in there. So with that, enjoy.
Thank you for that, Dan, and please thank the fire district for sharing that with us. It was nice to see the fire training facility, the structure made out of the containers. Gregory and Helen and I had the pleasure to visit that. And it's quite an impressive training facility you have back behind the station. And I'm sure the district would welcome any other members of council that would like to get up to date on some of the things they're doing over there. So thank you for that. I don't believe we have any other guest speakers, so we are now in item 5, public comment on agenda items only. If folks could kindly leave their remarks to 3 minutes, and anyone that's approaching, please identify yourself and where you live for the clerk's benefit.
Back again. Jane Underwood, 130 Perryman Street. I attended the planning meeting here last Thursday, and there were a lot of good ideas that were presented. There was one that didn't seem to fly very much, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought it was rather important. For those of you who are rather new in the area, our census numbers are down considerably. We used to be equal to Douglas. We used to kind of seesaw back and forth, but I've seen figures that are considerably lower. Also, as a retired teacher, I'm aware that we have an excellent school system here in Saugatuck Douglas. I would like to see a member of the Board of Education, either the superintendent or one of the principals, to be part of this committee that's going to be formed regarding the short-term rentals. I think they need a voice at the table. Our schools are so good. We want to keep the schools. I was in this room a number of years ago when the superintendent came up pleading that something be done, because if we do not keep our numbers up, The state will combine the Saugatuck schools with either Fenville or Hamilton. And that would mean long bus rides for children. Our schools are so good that we're attracting very, very interesting, accomplished new members of our community. I happen to know of a couple Oxbridge graduates that moved here because of our schools. If you're not sure what Oxbridge is, it means they went to Oxford and Cambridge in England. So please consider having someone from the schools as a part of this group. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Any other members of the audience that would like to address the council during public comment? Seeing none, anyone online that would like to address the council during public comment? I see no hands raised, Jamie. With that, we will close public comment. There will be another public comment period later in the workshop. That leads us to item 6, discussion items. 6A, summary of capital improvements planning activities. I believe John Moxie will kick this one off for us. So John, you have the floor.
Good afternoon. I feel woefully unprepared this afternoon. I have no video to share with you. I'm going to ask Scott to jump in whenever he feels like he wants to. He and I have been working the past couple of months since we last met as a group here to kind of fine tune our capital improvements plan. If you remember, this kind of kicked off last summer. We did the PASER rating of all the roads in the city. Combined that with some known utility needs, came up with a draft list of projects that we felt were priorities. Met with city staff, kind of fine-tuned that, came to this group last November, got a little bit more feedback and direction. Scott and I kind of incorporated that into our plan. And that's what we wanted to present to you today is kind of where we stand. Again, this is a planning document. This is not this is exactly what we're going to do year by year, but this is a roadmap at least that we can follow. This is going to change as the situation on the ground changes, as funding opportunities come and go. But wanted to at least walk through kind of what's in this plan. And if you remember from last time, a big part of the memo I put together is devoted to Eagle's recent lead and copper rules, because that kind of is the elephant in the room whenever we're talking about infrastructure. Basically to meet those rules between now and 2041, we will be probably tearing into just about every road in the city to replace those water services that fall under that ruling. The design life for brand new asphalt pavement is 20 years. So you can see the overlap there, that we really don't want to put new pavement down without verifying that we've addressed the water service is in that area that we're paving. So the plan is a number of things. Jamie, if you want to scan down to the spreadsheet, I don't know how well it'll come through, but we can at least see it in big picture terms. Kind of a multiple front focus for the next couple of years. Everything you see there, and I apologize, I used a lot of different blues, and I don't think any of them are the official Saugatuck City Seal blue. But the grayish blue one, there is all the projects that we've highlighted that we feel are good to include in an application to the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. We talked about that program last time we were here. Basically, what that is a loan and grant program that water system communities can use, tap into to fund larger scale water system projects. So the intent there would be to use that program to fund not only replacement of the water mains that we know about, but also go all the way through town and try and locate and replace the water services that need to get replaced, to try and at least get us ahead in the game, maybe not touch every single one that needs to get replaced, but the vast majority, hopefully, of those. As well as some work at the well field, some storage tank improvements that we know are coming, to kind of take a comprehensive look at the water system and try and address those needs. And then as we're touching those various roads, come behind them and make whatever improvements are necessary. One of the things that came out of our last meeting, we specifically identified that north piece of Park Street between the Chain Ferry and Perryman. to take a hard look at whether the water main needs replacing, first of all, for sure address the water services there. And then as we put the road back together, do some kind of an improvement, either widening the shoulders or doing kind of a set alone path sidewalk, something like that. The form of that can doesn't need to be decided tonight, but that's kind of the part of that phase, basically, if you will. So everything highlighted in blue potentially would be part of that project. As you may recall, we submitted an intent to apply last November for that program. The actual application is due within the next few months, and it's a pretty lengthy process to put together. It ends up being a 2-inch thick report, basically, that gets submitted to Eagle. So that should start now. We put together a proposal just to kind of set a budget to get through that process, if that's the way this group wants to go. In the end, with any of the things that we have in the plan, the go button is basically, we would get you a proposal or some kind of mechanism to authorize, yes, this is something we want to pull the trigger on. Let's get going. So that's attached to my memo. Thing two, we looked for high priority road needs that didn't really have associated utility needs. We were looking for things that we could implement on a pretty quick turnaround, that didn't have a lot of permitting and planning and other agencies involved, things like that. And so the east-west Taylor-Tacon rose to the top of the list. Those of you that have been in that area last spring saw the giant crater that formed because we had a drain tile, an old drain tile, we think, failed, and so that area was saturated. You get traffic on that saturated soil, and it turned into what it did. So Scott and his crew put together kind of a Band-Aid on it last spring, thinking that we would be coming forward with a more long-term solution soon. Soon, in this case, again, we've got a proposal to kind of get through the design and bidding phases of replacing the asphalt pavement, trying to use some of the existing pavement to build up the base of that road, a lot like what we did on Campbell Road and Park Street in recent years, and then coming through and trying to do some drainage repairs, corrections, potentially implement some things that would mitigate stormwater runoff because we're upstream from our favorite spot on Maple Street there. So that's all kind of built into this is kind of the next step in that. That's thing two. Thing three, if you back up one slide, Jamie, to the road condition map, that road condition map color coded, so you can kind of digest what's what. Purple being brand new road that we just touched. You can see a few things on there. Campbell's obviously on there. The north end of Perryman's on there. That cyan, that good Microsoft cyan color is still very good. Those are things that have been touched in the last probably 3 years, 4 years. You can see pieces of Allegan Street on there, Perryman's on there. Green, good. We've got Blue Star on there. A piece of Culver that was done quite a while ago is still in good condition. And then all of those three are basically good candidates for crack sealing. We recommend that the city come through and crack seal those at least every couple of years to try and preserve that pavement as good as we can, as long as we can. The way asphalt pavement deteriorates is one, just the sunlight over time breaks down the asphalt binder, oxidizes it. So no road that we put out there is going to last forever. But the second way is that when it develops cracks, water gets into the cracks, gets into that base material, and you get situations like we had on Tacon Street, where that soft, wet base just can't support the loads. So keeping them crack sealed is important. We think we can pull the trigger and do another crack seal project this fall. The last time the city did a crack seal project, we kind of pushed it later into fall, trying to impact businesses, residents as little as possible. I think we went a little too late. It didn't hold up as well. So we'd be looking to hopefully do that probably right after Labor Day weekend. Try and just block off parking one area at a time and get it all sealed up. Again, for those good to excellent roads. Yellow there is kind of a middle ground. A lot of those roads have been touched, but it's been probably 10 years for a lot of them. Some of that can be crack sealed still. Some of those are moving more towards like a surface seal treatment. There's just enough cracking that to try and trace each one just doesn't have the same impact. So those would be looking everything in orange, yellow, and some of the red, looking to do more of a surface treatment. The red being failed pavement, you've got some serious issues there where that surface treatment becomes less and less effective, a combination of some patching and surface treatment, or just wholesale replacement of the asphalt surface. And then we also have shown in there gravel roads. The city does still have some public gravel roads there. I will point out that Mill Street is the only one that's not a dead end. We talked last time about putting that on the capital improvements plan because that serves more than just the residents that are on that street. That is the home of pump stations, some public infrastructure, as well as being a through street. It gets a little more traffic than just the dead ends do. So again, that was combined with the various utility mapping, and that's what went into it. That was thing 3 is crack sealing. Thing 4 is more of a in-depth, some of those surface treatments. And at the bottom of the capital improvements plan, we kind of have a menu. We developed a menu of roads that kind of apply to those 2 things for Scott and us and others to kind of choose from as we start hitting play. So the idea would be to do those first 3 things, hopefully this year, get those rolling this year. Crack sealing is a pretty easy one to roll out. We put together a simple bid package. We get quotes and we're off and running. The surface treatment being a little more involved, we probably want to fine tune our selection of what we want to do where, and then put that out for bids over the winter, get it done next spring before things really start getting busy on the roads here. Scott has kind of picked his favorites already for those. Maybe I'll turn it over to you, Scott, if you want to kind of run through which ones of those you like and why.
Yeah, I've worked a lot with John lately, always learned a ton. F&V does a phenomenal job. I really got a much better grasp on our capital improvements plan and what exactly it means in real terms, how to use it and whatnot. So it's very helpful. But going along with that, Taylor attacking East West Street, the Public Works Department, we would recommend moving forward with that because like you said, it's not contingent on any grant funding of any sort. And it's something we can roll out very quickly and they need it. We've taken chunks of our snow plows out, catching on iron castings that are protruding up from the asphalt, which is deteriorated. And it all kind of ties in with the drainage issue that leads over to Maple Street. So we do think that that's a good time to tackle that. Rough estimates for that project would be around 400,000 for all 4 of those streets. And then the part that Public Works was focused on a little bit more was on the very bottom of the capital improvements plan. So on the bottom left, that's the list of candidate roads for crack sealing. And up towards the top, it looks like we can get all of those done for about 75,000. What's that? 25 for just those. Okay, even better. So, and we do recommend that because, from our understanding, best asphalt management practices state that you need to stick your funding into preventative maintenance to get as long a life expectancy out of these roads as possible. So we support that. And then along with it too, over on the other column, that's the patching and micro surface sealing. I didn't have a whole lot of time to edit it, but I do have a little priority list together. If it's okay, if I pass these out to you guys, so you can take a look at it. I'll also include it in my DPW report for Monday.
Okay, excellent.
Just to kind of get you to take a look at what we do as the priorities in terms of 2 different categories. One being how rough a condition is the road, and then 2, how much is it used? So based on those 2 qualifications, that's kind of how we formulated this list. It's not set in stone, but based on the current conditions on there, this is kind of what we view in terms of high priorities. So there is one on here that I did tweak a little bit from the CIP, which is the Park Street. Knowing that there's some underground utility work that needs to be done on Park Street, I'm not sure that it makes sense that we go ahead and do the micro surfacing for that amount of the road. But what we could do is, looking at Park Street from about Perryman over to Campbell, there's really about 2 areas that are just rough. One of them is it's right by 99 Park Street, just south of Vine Street, kind of goes up a hill. It's very rough. So I was kind of hopeful that we could just mill that, mill the top 2 inches off the road and lay new asphalt there. And then also just south of Vine Street, as you're traveling southbound, there's a strip right on the shoulder, which is where people walk. And, if a car gets up on that, they're going to swerve over and potentially have some safety concerns there. But if we could mill that strip as well, overall, the asphalt's not too bad besides those 2 areas. So that's the only tweak that that Public Works would recommend. So that's all I've got for you. I think, talking to Peter a little bit, it looks like for the 2024 budget for road projects, about 600,000. We're well within that. And we also have a couple million in reserves. So if maybe there could be some sort of a cap on the expenditure, but depending on what that budget was set at would depend on how much of the slurry sealing and microsurfacing that we could complete. And that's really going to make a big impact. And I think people are going to they're going to see it, and it's going to be very noticeable that we're getting some road work done.
Good. Excellent. Thank you for that, Scott, and thank you, John. Council, any questions for John or Scott?
What was the price again? I know you said 75, but it's not. What was the price for the crack sealing for the roads that we mentioned here?
Well, last time we did it, I want to say it was about 15,000. We inflated that to 25, knowing that there's more cracks out there and
Sure.
inflation and everything else.
So about 25.
25 is what we're thinking we can do the good condition roads.
Okay.
When you have these high, medium and low priorities, what's the timing on this as far as the priority? Is it 1 year, 2 years?
Yeah, the intent would be to tackle the first set of kind of the patching and surfacing next spring.
Okay,
So,
and then medium would be like not next spring.
right.
Okay,
Not this spring, next spring.
Yeah, in order of priority, urgency on your end, if you like what you hear, and no hard feelings if you don't, this is, 2 people's plans. It takes more than that to figure out where we're going to go. But if you like what you heard, the most urgent would be that Eagle DWSRF, because it does have a set deadline when that has to go in.
Mhm.
It's an annual program. We could wait and do it next year, but we know that there is a lot of extra money in that program this year. So now is the time. If that sounds like a good approach to get this done, now is the time to do it. So I would urge you to do that Monday night if that sounds like a good approach. Next order of priority would be the East-West Tech and Taylor. That's why I included both of those in your packet for today. Just because we need to get it designed out for bids, give plenty of time for bidding and all that needs to happen before we construct it. Make sure we get it constructed while the weather's still good this fall. Next priority would be crack sealing, again, just because that's something we would like to do this year. Again, this fall, less of a high priority because it doesn't take as much time on our end to put together a bid package. And then the fourth would be the sealing for next spring, just because it is next spring. It gives us a little more time to get things lined up on our end. So those are our 4 priorities. Again, if you have other directions to go, by all means, that's why we're here.
Any other?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, gentlemen, for the work. This is a lot to absorb, so I want some time to kind of consider what we're seeing here. A few questions that come up, though. One is, I want to clarify, I just don't understand on the map, on the Pacer. That's real clear, but there's one question about, so the alleys and street ends are not marked. So is there how does that work in? So if you've got an alley, like for instance, the alley that's behind Scooter's building and the condominium building behind it. Now that's a private alley, is that correct? But it's yeah. So my question though, is that for those areas that are not part of the study, but are really pavement, how do those figure into any kind of plans? Are they excluded or just more of a FYI?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. That's a good question. What's shown on here correlates very closely to what's on your Act 51 map, what you're getting money from the state every year to maintain and improve.
Okay.
To be on your Act 51 map, it has to be within public right of way or easement, has to be open to the public, and open for public use, basically. Those are the criteria. So a private alley is really, I guess it depends on what it is, whether it is private infrastructure that the city doesn't really invest in, or whether it's in an easement or something like that serves enough properties that it's considered public infrastructure. Those would be kind of case by case basis, I think. I'm sure there are some oddballs out there that, don't fall into one bucket or the other. They're somewhere in between.
Thank you. So in terms of the priorities, I'm assuming that the city manager is going to be involved in this discussion too. I'm kind of curious on your feedback in terms of the priorities that have been set by the DPW superintendent and the engineer.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I've been hands-on with this process, and I thought Scott Herbert, and I think this is correct, given that he's in the field every day, he was best situated to go with John Moxie on this field analysis. So I'm touching all of this.
Okay, thank you. The other thing is the financials that are on the slide that we spent most of our time on. I'm a numbers guy, so I always look for a footer, right? Exactly what's the bottom line estimated cost for these projects for the calendar year. So is that number?
There are multiple bottom lines.
Yeah.
The shaded gray.
That's kinda what I thought.
The shaded gray kind of breaks down each category, and I should probably have gone over it at the time. The first block there is kind of road and kind of drainage type stuff. The surface stuff. The second block there is water system. Third block, wastewater system. And then we've got a block for other. What shows up under other is things like the exterior of the city hall is in there. And then the DPW parking lot we know is in rough shape. And so we wanted to at least keep those on the radar as we're kind of laying out things that are going to hit the budget. But yeah, those gray areas are where it totals each of those categories.
Thank you. So where I was going with that is, what I'd like to see for us to talk about is that, and thank you very much, Mr. Herbert, for putting together this kind of high, medium and low priority. I always look for dollars to be associated with a particular project as well as timeline, so I can kind of put those together. But ultimately, what this comes down to is what the city's budgeted for this calendar year for projects compared to what you're prioritizing. I'd love to see that comparison, just so there's a certain amount of money that we have to allocate to spend this year. And how's this fit in? Maybe that's all been calculated into this. Wonderful if it has been. I just want to visually see that, because ultimately what I'd like to see us do is that we want to adopt this CIP formally, because then we can tell the public, because I don't know if any council members and probably the city manager too. So which roads are you working on this year? And I think the superintendent mentioned that too, is like, I want to be able to clearly articulate or point them to a spot and say, here's the plan. I know full well that grants come in, that projects change, priorities change, sewer mains blow up. I mean, you name it, things can throw every plan out the door. But I think it's very important for the public to understand that there's been a lot of work put into this, and that we've approved a CIP that the city manager will work with the treasurer and the engineer and the superintendent, everybody else involved, to make sure the stuff stays on track. That's important for our public to know.
Yeah, that's a big piece. It needs to get paid for at the end of the day. We are well down that road. If you'll apologize for the pun. We met with Peter specifically and have had conversations with him. So this is calibrated to the amount of revenue that you have coming in
Right.
every year. And again, Scott mentioned we are starting with a multi-million-dollar buffer. Obviously, we don't want to spend that in year 1 or 2 or 5 even. But so we do have some room to, if we have a heavy year, we can dip into that if we need to. But yes, to your point, we have some rough big picture costs associated with each one of these projects. Not those are going to change as the plan changes and everything else, but at least to kind of show the magnitude of the project. And then that is again calibrated to the city's revenue stream at least.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, and so we can roll up our recommendation in an executive summary to
excellent.
show you exactly what the numbers, well, not exactly, but because we have to go out to bid and to see what they are, but a rough estimate.
Right.
Put that on one page so you can see it clearly.
Perfect. And I
Yeah.
think, and the vision I have for this is that anybody that stops me on the street and says, okay, Russ, what streets are you working on? I say East, West, Taylor and Tacken. Most folks are going to go, where the heck are those streets first? Once I explain where they are, two is going to say, why in the world aren't you working on the street in front of my house, for instance, like Elizabeth Street in front of the school, right?
Right.
Gets a lot of calls, gets a lot of attention. It's on the priority schedule, but it's not going to be looked at this year because of some other issues. I think what we need to get better at is explaining the work that everybody puts into this and when things are planned to be done. So I can explain, anybody can explain, yes, it's on the plan, it's in year 3, and here's the reasons why.
Yeah.
So Does that make sense what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
it sure does. Yep, these are shown by year. Again, they have a rough budget on them. So
Mhm.
I think the information to have those conversations is here. And we can certainly facilitate those conversations.
Again, not a criticism. I'm
Mhm.
trying to position this so we can all be successful with communicating this to our citizens and people that may ask questions.
Yeah, for sure.
So.
Go ahead, Holly.
I just wanted to comment that I've never seen DPW and Scott be involved in this, so I commend all three of you for taking this approach. Obviously, Scott and your crew, you're on the roads every day, so I think bringing both of you together is the first time I've seen this, and so thank you to all three of you for taking that approach.
You're welcome.
And my next question, or that wasn't a question, it's comment, Mike, I have a question for John. What is the bidding and vendor situation looking like these days? What do you,
It is, I'll
what
say it
can
is
we look forward
it
to,
is
John Moxley?
calming down, but it is not calm. How's that?
Okay.
It is not as crazy as it was in 2022. Things are starting to settle, but we're not seeing prices roll back. We're seeing a leveling off to more of a normal inflationary period.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are
Things starting
there-
to settle. Was that another road pun?
I'll give you credit for it.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
So are you seeing, are you having maybe still issues with how many vendors will step forward to bid? Are there less companies? Are there staffing issues
Yeah.
going? Or how's the
Yeah, we're
supply
not-
chains for this type
Yeah.
of work?
Great
Just
question.
what do we need
Um,
to?
Better
kind of
than we were in
build in?
2022, but not where we were in 2019.
Okay.
I'll say, yeah, it's starting to get better. This time last year or two, yeah, most of 2022, we were seeing water main materials are about a year out.
Mhm. Yeah.
Which was throwing a wrench in
Remember that, yeah.
everything because it came at a time when everybody's doing water projects because of the lead and copper rules. So that has started to come down to 8 to 10 months probably, and hopefully we'll see that continue.
Okay.
But yeah, we are seeing more bidders on projects. I bid a little pedestrian bridge project a couple of months ago, and I had 5 or 6 bidders on that. A project like that, I might have been happy with 2 or 3. So yeah, we're starting to see it calm down a little bit,
Okay.
but we're not there yet.
Good.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Lauren, anything?
The only thing I have is, I don't know how to word this, but your opinion on how successful we've been as far as getting any of these grants. I feel like we try our darndest, but oftentimes, I don't know if that's true, but I feel like we often don't
Yeah.
qualify for these grants.
I have that conversation with myself every time an opportunity comes across my desk. We have, yeah, you put it exactly right. We've tried our darndest. We put in a lot of different grant applications and not been successful for
Yeah.
various reasons. The biggest one seems to be that Saugatuck is too rich. I mean,
Yeah.
we start multiple points behind every, smaller, rural community that we're going up against just because our income level, there's a disparity there. And that's almost always a points on an application that we just can't get. We can't control it. It's nothing that anybody's doing wrong. It's no community feels like they have too much money, but that's the reality of what the census data says. So that's a big part of it. Ryan and I met with the county on their COVID relief funding. We thought we had a great opportunity. And at the last minute, they said, well, no, we're only going to do construction projects. We're not going to do your planning project to get our arms around the water system. So we've hit a few bumps in the road.
So do we feel like we oftentimes kick the can down the road, hoping for a grant to come in and then we just, instead of
That's
just
part of
going
it.
ahead with the project?
That's definitely part of it. And that's kind of where the DW SRF conversation, it could lead. I mean, we may not make it. There's a lot of communities that are going to be applying, and even to get a subsidized loan might be a hard sell, but we'll try our best. If we don't, then we can come back, and that's where, the plan changes, and we could break off pieces of it ourselves and just, start implementing the pieces that are the highest priorities of the high priorities.
Okay.
And oh, did you want to?
Oh, just add to that, Mr. Mayor, There is some hope, right, with some of the state funding that's available, and they're looking at municipalities that had not been previously funded.
Yeah, with category B specifically, the MDOT program that we tried 3 or 4 times now, and each time I think we apply, we have a better chance. I was telling Scott that I personally did 6 of those applications last year. I got 2 of them funded, so it's not our applications that are bad or anything like that. We're doing the same types of applications for everyone. I think it's just a matter of wait and see, hopefully.
And actually, I'm going to build on Lauren's comment. And I just want to make sure we're clear. When do you need a decision or a vote from this council to meet that deadline for the state revolving fund?
I would say if
Opportunity.
you want to do it, let's do it Monday night.
Okay.
Because otherwise we're going to run out of time to get it on public display and public hearings.
Ryan, can you be ready for something for us to vote on Monday night?
Mr. Mayor, I'll cue that up with the executive summary.
And can I ask my colleagues on the council, all them to really look closely at this? And I would like a decision on it Monday because I don't want to miss it. I know it's sometimes we feel like we're beating our head against the wall, but I if we don't ask, we're not going to get. So I'd like to have it for a vote on Monday if we could. So thank you.
That's probably the case for the Fielder Tack East West design. Well.
We have a little more time for that one, but the sooner the better. If
Okay.
that's something you want to do this year, we should really start moving.
All right, go ahead, Gregory.
I have another question too. Now, so the grant, this grant process, the due date is June 1st, right? To turn that in. And so we get that going. When will we know a result from that? How long does that take?
Yeah, they will publish the priority list mid to late summer, and the final priority list comes out, I want to say September, October.
Okay.
Then we would be in design through 24 and construction 25, or maybe even a little more aggressive than that, probably start construction sometime in 24 even.
Okay, so, and then also, so I'm kind of clear, like maybe towards what Russ was saying, say we don't get this grant, you're gonna go back to the drawing board and come up with another plan for us. Is that correct? Or, okay.
Yep, there,
Great.
everything in blue is part of that.
That's what
So
I thought,
We would,
yeah.
we would look at those things in blue and say, what do we want to put forward and go our own.
And start working on so that we can get some work started right away.
Yeah, if they tell us no in the fall, we could start trying to implement something probably by the end of 24 even.
Yeah, okay. I think our residents would like to see the sooner the better, these roads getting worked on. So that's why I asked.
Yep.
Thank you.
I think we've covered that. And I think let's fix the damn roads.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That takes us to item 6B, resolution 230213-B-2023, poverty exemption guideline, page 11. We have Don, the assessor, on the Zoom. I'll turn it over to you, Don.
Good afternoon, all. So what we're asking the council to approve and adopt this evening, or actually for Monday, is the poverty exemption guidelines. We have to do this on a yearly basis. And the guidelines that are laid out before you are actually the state guidelines. We don't modify it for the city at all, as we've adopted the state guidelines every year that we've been there so far. And looking in the historically, you have also adopted it every year prior to our taking over the assessing there in the city. It's really a pretty straightforward ask of us to do. It lays out how to apply for it. It lays out the guidelines for it, the asset test, what you can and cannot possess in order to qualify for the guidelines, in order to receive a certain percentage of exemption for property taxes.
Great. Thanks for that, Don. Any discussion, any questions of the council? I think we're good on this one. Seems pretty routine. There's no further discussion. We will, thank you for that, Don, and we'll put it on the agenda for a vote on Monday.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you very much.
I would just make a remark. I mean, I know that it's not something that has been utilized in the community very much, but it does exist and people have used it. And I think it's based on some of the comments of our last conversation and our income levels. I think it's really important that even though it's state mandated, I think this is an important process that's available to citizens.
You're right to point that out, Holly. Thank you for that. So with that, we are going to go to 6C Resolution 2302-13-A, short-term rental task force. We have this on page 16 of the packet. And I believe Ryan Cummins is going to lead us through this. Go ahead, Ryan.
Got my papers here. So thank you, Mayor and City Council members. I'm just going to kind of go back a little bit in time, just kind of run through a timeline of how we ended up here. In October, the Planning Commission had kind of set some priorities for 2023. And one of the priorities they set based on some concerns they were hearing from the community and concerns they had were to take a look at short-term rentals in 2023. And then in December, as you recall, you had a strategic planning session and set a variety of priorities for staff this year. But some of your essential priorities were looking at short-term rentals because you too were hearing concerns from your constituents and had concerns. And then also looking at fees for short-term rentals. Also in December, the Planning Commission started that initial discussion. And what they requested from staff at that time was for their January meeting to bring back some data to kind of show them where we were at in the community with short-term rentals, at least what we had internally as far as data goes, and to provide them with some recommendations on maybe forming a committee and taking those next steps to review short-term rentals. So in January, staff brought data to the Planning Commission for them to review. They took a look at the overall number of short-term rentals in the community. They looked at the number of short-term rentals by zoning district, the number of residential parcels and overall parcels that the community has. We mapped out the known short-term rentals for them so they could take a look at that. And then provided them with some recommendations on forming a committee. And the Planning Commission directed staff to do at that meeting in January was to, they essentially decided they wanted to make a formal recommendation to the City Council to form a task force to take a look at short-term rentals. So there was the chairman had kind of had a framework for that, but they wanted that set up in more of a formal resolution. And so they set a special meeting on February 2nd for staff to kind of take their feedback and have them review that formal recommendation. They kind of wordsmithed it. And essentially, that's what you have in your packet tonight is a formal recommendation from the Planning Commission to form a short-term rental task force in accordance with section 4.28 of your charter, which essentially states that the mayor, with the advice and consent of the whole council, can form an advisory committee or board regarding any municipal activity. And one thing that we discussed with the Planning Commission was that the Planning Commission has the ability to certainly form their own committee, but they would have been limited in scope to reviewing the zoning regulations. So any of the regulatory or police powers related concerns that short-term rentals involve are really policy decisions that the council makes. Fees are set by the council, and so concerns and options related to fees are something that the council would have to make a decision on. And so we had a discussion about the most comprehensive way to look at not only the zoning ordinance regulations, but also the police powers and regulatory requirements, as well as your fees, was to form this comprehensive task force. And so Planning Commission has provided you with very lengthy resolution, but was quite specific in what they thought the makeup of a short-term rental task force should be, what their purpose should be, what the timeline of their work should be, and how their work would kind of be conducted. So tonight, staff is asking you, the City Council, to discuss the Planning Commission's recommendations. You could adopt all of the Planning Commission's recommendations. You could pass your own formal resolution, which would outline what you think the makeup of such a task force should be, what the purpose should be, what the timeline should be, any of the requirements that you want to set. It would ultimately be a task force or advisory committee that would be set up under the City Council's purview, or you could decide to go in a completely different direction. The option is all yours as the City Council and policymakers. So that's what we're here to discuss with you tonight, and look forward to your feedback.
Thank you, Ryan. I did notice we had the chair, Steve Mann, on the Zoom. Is Steve still on? If you are, Steve, it might be a good time for you to backstop what Ryan said with any comments of your own. Thanks.
Yes, Scott. Still on here. I don't have the video going. I can put the video on.
Yeah, we can hear you, so feel free. If
Okay.
there's anything you'd like to add, please do.
No, I think Ryan's done a very good job in kind of summarizing. And I think I was listening to even the public comments that were mentioned earlier. in regards to the makeup of the committee and the potential of a school board type of person. We did put a lot of thought into the committee itself, trying to make certain that it represents not only the leadership within Saugatuck, but also all different parts of the community, and trying to make certain that we'd have some type of parity between what we would perceive might be individuals that would be a little more favorable to, leaving status quo regarding short-term rental, and then with those that maybe want to see more changes to our current policies, trying to put something together that would really enable them to go in and have an open mind, because first we've got to identify what are the issues. And the issues have to be kind of community-wide, as far as what we're trying to achieve by looking at this and prioritizing what the issues are, what the concerns are, what the problems are, and then taking a look at how would you address each of those issues and problems. And of course, the task force is designed to kind of be able to do that and set their own type of agenda for how they would gather that information. And then only after gathering that would they want to try to identify, do we need to make any changes, or is status quo fine? The one thing regarding the school board, I think during the conversation, we were trying to decide, should we put a specific school board person on the committee? But the committee is going to require a great deal of time. And so we didn't want to run into a situation where potentially the school board committees might say, hey, I don't have that much time. But if somebody is interested, we would definitely want to consider them in one of the categories that they would fall into. So I think, there's a way that we can still give that a priority without it being a specific area. But if the council wanted to make it, one, we could always remove one of the other ones and make it a specific to the school board, but we might be limiting ourselves to the actual availability of a good candidate. But I think it's a great idea for us to kind of have this, to be able to survey and do public meetings with the city residents to try to determine, what are the issues, and then to set up priorities, and then have discussions about, do we have changes that are necessary, and bring it back to the planning commission for us to give you our recommendations later on this year, with the goal of trying to have something no later than the September meetings. So that's it.
Thanks, Steve. We can turn it over to council now for.
I had a thought. I mean, I hear what Jane Underwood is saying about having representation from the school, and this issue obviously greatly affects the school system and the school board. So I'm wondering if there is not a member of the school board specifically called out, if there might be a liaison between the school board or between the schools and this committee, just so that, to Jane's point, that somebody from the school system does at least come and say, hey, here's our perspective, here are our data points, here's, we would like you to keep your eye on X, Y, and Z. That would seem, I mean, to Steve's point, it might be too much to ask of a school board member who's, putting in that time, but they may be able to come, attend meetings on some level.
Thanks, Holly. Any other questions,
Um,
discussion items among the council?
I have one,
Go
Mr.
ahead,
Mayor, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Lauren.
Over the weekend, I did do some research into the process that other communities are doing to update their short-term rental policies. I did share them with you and Mr. Manager today, and I was trying to get them into the packet. It was a little late for that, but I'll have them in the packet for Monday's meeting. Basically, Sutton's Bay hired a professional city planning firm, and I think that we would do well to mirror their policy. It wouldn't negate an ad hoc committee, an advisory committee. The advisory committee could still engage in efforts to outreach and engagement with the residents, property owners, other stakeholders. But I think hiring a professional firm could ease the concerns that any one constituency in Saugatuck is going to drive the process and end up with a biased result. It seems to me like there's no reason for us to recreate the wheel. There are whole firms that do this, and they're very successful and very busy. And I think that we would do well to consider engaging with a professional firm such as Sutton's Bay did last year.
I agree with what Helen is saying. Just having a professional firm like have guidance with, some sort of committee. Because a lot of ideas come out of committees and the firm can say, okay, well, there's a reason why we can't do that. I just think it just makes all sorts of sense.
When I read the letter, and again, it'll be in the packet, but when I read the letter, they've looked at 51 other short-term rental ordinances done in Michigan.
Yeah.
With neighboring communities. They've got offices in Grant. I mean, the one that I looked at, I'm not biased as to which one we would look into hiring, but they exist for that purpose to give guidance, and they are objective and they are neutral and they are professional. And I am in favor of that.
Other council members?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I just want to acknowledge that I think most of the planning commission is on today's call or here in the room. So thank you very much for taking the time to be here. And I want to thank Ryan. I want to thank Sarah for their work in getting us to this point. In regards to the professional consultation, the planning commission has, I believe, a $25,000 budget for professional consultation for items that may come up during the year. I fully support that idea. We have a planning consultant that I believe Ryan already in the city's worked with for a number of years that could very well be used or could be a reference for some type of professional consultation on this project. So I'm fully in support of that. Really just to kind of take us through where the planning commission went with this, really the things that we were focused on is why are we doing this? And I think that's pretty clear. The community is concerned about this issue and there needs to be some study of it. Two is what's the composition? And that's the page that was up just a moment ago. And we spent quite a bit of time on deciding who really we would recommend would be on this. And I still think there's room for some growth on that. There's 9, I think is a total number on there. I personally would like to see another member of the community who maybe doesn't have an opinion about short-term rentals, but is a resident. I think there's an opportunity to get some additional residents. I mean, I don't think we're gonna have an issue populating this task force. I have really literally heard from people via Facebook, email, you name it. Russ, how do I apply? How do I get on this task force? I think we're going to get some people that are going to really be engaged on this. And I think we want to make sure that we don't make this a large group, but big enough so it's going to be, represents all the different aspects of our community. The other thing that we talked about is duration. This is a task force. It's not an advisory committee. It's going to start and stop at specific times. So in the resolution, it says we'll start as soon as, and we're going to follow the interview and the application process the city already has in place for people who may be interested in being on this task force, assuming council approves this, that we would then report back, the task force would then report back to the planning commission in September and a recommendation to the council probably in October, I think is the timeframe we had identified. And the group itself would be disbanded at the end of December. So it doesn't have it's not going to last forever. It's got a very specific task. And so the point that was made is that people that are going to be on this task force have to be engaged because there's going to be quite a bit of data collected, problems identified, solutions discussed, different things that we'll be looking at, probably other communities in the state of Michigan, perhaps elsewhere. So it's going to be a very intensive effort. And the planning commission, talked about the duration. And we all pretty much agreed it needs to be done in a forthright and fast enough fashion so it doesn't feel like it's dragging, but also it's not going to be going on forever either. And not so fast as we can't do it right. So fortunately, there's a lot of other communities in the country and in Michigan that have done this, and we can use that as guidance. So there's a lot of stuff that we can use. Really, and what's expected, that was our other thing, is what do we really want this task force to accomplish? The way I've always looked at it is problem definition, which we started on, data collection, solution identification, and then recommendations is really what I think this task force will be tasked with. So.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead. Bob.
Just for clarification, the consulting firm that we use for the planning commission, is that something that they could handle as a professional firm on the short-term rental deal? Or is this something where we need a different firm than the one we're currently using?
Yeah, I'm not sure what our current consultant's capacity is to take on this kind of committee work for an extensive period of time. We can explore that, but I think we could also explore other options to help guide a task force through their work over the next several months. I think.
If I may, I would definitely like to engage with a firm that does this as city planners, urban planners, environmental experts to engage in. Not something that someone does like as a side job for us. And I don't know what the firm is. I'm not saying anything to that at all. I'm just saying that there are firms out there who do this
Yeah,
specifically for this reason. I think it would behoove us to engage with one of those firms.
Yeah, sure that. I'll just for knowledge, because I know we do have, a lot of council members that may not have met our consultant planner, but he has his own firm, but he helps with master plan updates, full ordinance updates, a vast amount of experience, but I think he also has a limited amount of capacity too. So I think your point about, at least exploring other firms that maybe are used to dealing with short-term rental policy updates on a more regular basis could be
And the
beneficial.
information that I provided that will be in the packet, like I said, I wasn't in time and to get it into today's. There is a sample of the one that was recently done for Sutton's Bay. Like I said, it's a city about our size, same situation. And it was thorough, it was concise, and I was impressed with the report, but it's one of other firms that do it. I'm not advocating any one firm. I would just like a firm who does this.
Yeah, and
Advises.
Councilmember Baldwin, great point. And as a matter of fact, the Sutton's Bay zoning administrator actually met in the planning commission training that we did last year. So there's a good community that we can connect with to say, here's what we're looking for. Does anybody else have some experience with it? I can't remember the guy's name in Sutton's Bay, but I actually connected with him. So
I would be very interested in pursuing that.
Yeah, we can definitely, and we have a lot of listserv partners that we can also ask about other firms that have helped other communities as well. And yep.
Thank you.
Further questions, comments, discussion? Just to circle back on this, Holly, I think it's a very good point. And thank you, Jane. I'm committed to, as best as I possibly can, to clear my schedule to work with Steve to identify the members of this committee. And I think wherever we can find people that tick a lot of boxes, someone that can, bring a school perspective is along with other perspectives. I'm a little bit concerned about kind of mission creep, not mission creep, but size and just the ability to handle the size of the group. But I these are really good points about people that can bring a number of perspectives to the table and for some of these key stakeholder groups. And, I 100% agree that the school system is very important in this discussion.
And Mayor, I would also add that there will be plenty of opportunities for public input. The planning commission was very clear that we want to hear from people. There will probably be some type of a survey process, a professional survey process that will be completed. That details haven't been worked out on that, but this is not going to be a small group meeting in a room with no input. This is going to get a lot of interest and a lot of feedback, and whether we want the feedback or not, it's going to be coming. The matter is collecting it and using it for the purposes.
Yeah, and thanks, Russ.
And
And go ahead, Holly.
sorry.
Yes, please, go ahead.
I just had a question too about the makeup of the task force, because obviously I'm just wondering how sort of strict or drawn these categories are, because what if you aren't able to get, exactly what you've asked for? Is it sort of like the spirit of representation? Is that sort of what you're looking for, or?
Yeah, and Chairman Mans actually began this process with this list, and we've done some research from some other communities, so we're trying to mirror some of what some other communities have done on this. To your point, that's another thing that should be mentioned, is that the discussion was, can only residents serve on this? In other words,
That's a good
being a resident
question
of the
too,
city.
yeah.
Because there's a number of property owners in town that own short-term rentals that are not residents, but yet are here quite a bit. So that's a question I think council will need to consider is that a line in the sand that we draw? Because if you do that, you are going to run into some potential issues where you can't fill a certain category because there's not a resident that fits that category. So I don't know where I fall on that quite yet. I don't know if I'm willing to draw that line in the sand.
Is
for the
that not a
reasons you mentioned.
discernible thing? I'm sorry. Is that not outlined in our charter anywhere?
No.
So it's just really it's up to the mayor and council to pick these
Yeah.
people, and it doesn't state anywhere in our charter about that they have
No.
to be.
So the Bald Head Work Group, as an example, there was city residents on it, but also 2 or 3 non-city residents, but were subject matter experts in the radar station.
And
As an
if
example.
I'm not mistaken, I think on Board of Review, if you own property, or even if you're a renter, you might be able to serve on Board of Review if you're not a homeowner. I'm not clear. I'm not sure about that. I don't know if Nico's still on, but yeah,
Interesting.
and that's a very good question, because do we want a committee of do we want some residents that are non-Saugatuck residents making the rules for Saugatuck residents? And that's something we need to think
It's a
about.
valid point, Holly. And I think this goes back to the need, to Helen's earlier point for an independent specialist consultant that's got a lot of experience in this issue in Michigan. And, I'm a big believer that, good decisions are made with the maximum amount of cold, hard facts. And I think the members, however many members we have, will benefit if early on in this process, as early as possible, we get them a good independent study that lay out the facts. I was very impressed with the piece of work that was done in Sutton's Bay by their independent consultant. I believe they're from Ann Arbor. We've talked about a lot of destination and vacation communities in the past. And once again, I do think, we are unique. We are a northern community. We have this ebb and flow with the seasons that, impact this discussion. So I completely support the independent study being done. And I have no concern about sparing any expense, whoever's budget it comes from. Mr. Manager, I'm very much in favor of getting that work done as quickly as possible. And really, if we have to use the Cadillac of consultants for this one, that's got deep experience in our state and the issues that our state is grappling with, I would be very supportive of that.
Yeah.
With that, I welcome any other comments, or we can move to the next item. It's
I'm
good.
just curious, now I'm gonna be all about Sutton's Bay now. I'm gonna be looking that up. I'm anxious to do that, because, I think that's a very good similarity to our town. Where it's really all tourist town there. There's not any industry there. How big is their school? Did you remember?
I
Is
didn't
that
look
part
into
of it? I'd like to know that too, so.
Great. We,
Good question.
You know?
I don't know.
I'll Google it.
Get it into the Googles.
I'm going to take the opportunity, since we're paying for them anyway. Kyle, is there anything you want to share with us about as we continue to move forward on this issue? It's, obviously quite complicated from a legal standpoint. If you think we're, if there's anything you want to flag right now, feel free. If not, I hate to call you out, surprise you just for fun.
So just real brief, when you think of the appointments of people to the committee, you did pass a policy about appointing to boards and commissions, and they do not have to be residents, so they can be property owners or some other stakeholders. But as the council has pointed out, there's policy implications with picking non-residents and practical implications. The general state of the law for short-term rentals right now is pretty local friendly. Number of different cases, one in Spring Lake Township, another one in Manchester Township, that have went to the extreme of not allowing short-term rentals in almost an entire community to not allowing them in a zoning district. And then there's current litigation in New Buffalo where there has been quite the series of moratoriums down there with short-term rental permits. And the city has been successful, at least from this, in a summary judgment action or a summary judgment opinion or order that was entered by the federal court, Western District, with their kind of process that they have set up there. So the gist of it is it's extremely flexible. And I have, my personal experience, we represent lakefront communities on big inland lakes, and then also some very, we'd consider rural communities that it's a wide spectrum of regulations, and you'll see that throughout the state. And so far, it's pretty, the case law has been pretty flexible in favor of the locals.
Thank you for that, Kyle. I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks.
Thank
And-
you.
What was the first community that you mentioned? You mentioned Manchester and New Buffalo.
Spring Lake Township.
Spring Lake Township.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you look up the, I have some of the cases, if you want to do a little reading. So the Spring Lake Township opinion is Ream, REAUME. And that's a 2020 opinion. And then Manchester Township is actually, it doesn't say Manchester Township in the case name, but it's Pigeon versus Ash K Island LLC. And then the New Buffalo case, I don't have the plaintiff's name, but it's New Buffalo and it's currently going on.
Okay, thank you.
Great,
Yeah, no
thanks.
problem.
Yeah.
RC, just a quick stat. I know in a lot of the things I've been reading, they talk about the percentage of homes that are short-term rentals. What, I know you sent out some things, but what is the percentage of homes in our area that are short-term rentals? Do you have that off the top of your head? If not, that's okay. I can
Yeah,
look it up.
so I mean, I have the data here. I figured, you might ask. So I mean, this number was, and it's a great question. So in January, as of January's data, it's changed since then, but the time there was 213 certified short-term rental units that we had certified. I know there's some firms out there who have indicated there's higher numbers to that. And I'm not saying I doubt that. And then we had about 34 that were actually on a hold status that were working through the process. Now, percentage is dependent on what you're comparing it to. So we're looking at total city parcels. We have 1,353 total city parcels. So you could take, 213 if you wanted to add in the 34 and divide it by 1353 and get a percentage. If you wanted to look at just residential condominium classifications that are on parcels, we have 901 of those. So it's kind of dependent on what you're looking at. Not all short-term rentals are just on a parcel with a residential or an assessed residential classification. They may be in a mixed use building. So it's a little, it depends on what you're looking at and what specifically you're looking for.
Ryan, if
Give
I
that
may,
percentage. Yep.
out of that 901,
Mhm.
are all of them able to be short-term rentals? Because I know that there are some short-term rental bans in different zones.
Yeah, so that's just 901 total city parcels that have that residential or
If you remove the residential ones where we have bans in certain condos and in certain areas, it'd be more like, what would be that number be? I mean, my point is we're we're like at a third
Mhm.
saturation rate with short-term rentals on available residential properties that don't have bans for the short-term rentals over that, we're at about a third, 30%.
I'd have to, yeah, definitely. That'd be an extra set of diving into the data to look at which particular parcels are in zoning districts that may not allow them, or maybe in, like I said, have a.
But in Michigan, we are at a very high rate.
Yeah, the reason why I was asking is because, I keep reading about all these other communities and they're at like 6%, 9%. I'm
yeah.
like, we're well above
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
correct?
Correct.
Well, I would say yes, but it's also, that's a policy decision that the community has to decide on. What do you feel is appropriate for you,
is.
given your economics and what you want for your community?
The other number that's not in there are those that are doing it that are not licensed.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So.
We don't know what that number is.
213 would be the absolute one that we know about. So that's going to be a low number. And then the 901 is a high number because that does not take into account the number of the residences where they have bans. There are condominium complexes.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
residences.
Right.
So
Some of
that
them
number
do
is going to be
have-
lower. So this number is
Right.
higher, that number is lower. It's probably closer to 300 and probably closer to 800.
Right.
So we're at like a really high saturation rate for our residential properties.
Yeah, I would say that the task force, if this resolution is approved, one of the very first things that they will do is begin studying this data and come up with measurements that everybody can agree to. So as we move forward, we can make decisions based on numbers that everybody can agree with. There's already some issues with the data that you've identified, that others have identified as well, that will need to be looked at by this task force.
Do you know off the top of your head, Sutton's Bay? Did you remember
I
reading
think
about?
theirs was like, and it'll be I think theirs was like 10%.
10%?
Oh, I
Okay.
thought it was lower. I thought it was.
It was
closer to
pretty
might
much
be
6.9 or something off
Closer
the
to
top
6.
of my head.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah.
By the way, their public school has 615 students and Saugatuck is 815. So it's about a little smaller, about a third smaller.
Well, we also have a lot of students from neighboring communities that are not part of
Sure.
Saugatuck.
For sure.
Great. Good discussion that to be continued. Anything else from council on this?
Good, Mayor, just for clarification for Monday, we do have in your packet a sample resolution that the council can pass on Monday if you wish to establish this task force. And it sounds like you want to establish this task force and we want to use the language that's in your packet with the makeup of the task force as presented.
Yeah, does anybody have any issues with the language that's in the resolution? Because that's what we have to approve on Monday, correct?
Right.
Right. It does state, I just want to point out, because the planning commission did have discussion about resident versus non-resident, the current resolution, again, you can change this. Is that the members of the short-term rental task force should be residents, property or business owners of the city of Saugatuck. Um,
I'm gonna want to look at it more. I haven't.
Okay.
I haven't.
yep, and you can make changes on Monday if you desire
Can-
to. So.
Can I ask the council then to feed comments into staff, flag, the red line, if you will, the changes that members of council made. So we as a group can understand any changes that may have come in, but I would like to move on this by Monday, if we could.
Yeah, that's another thing. If you prefer a different meeting, we certainly can do that. And there is also a piece in the resolution that talks about consultant planner assistance for the actual task force. So that language is already here, and I've heard loud and clear, I think, from the council.
Wonderful.
About what your expectations are for that planner. And then even if we don't have a member on the task force, that's an actual member of the school in some way. Certainly we can invite them to attend all of the meetings or provide some specific feedback on, to get their feedback and concerns they may have as well.
So we can create that mechanism.
And then
if
let
need
them
be.
know that one way or the other, we are interested in their opinion. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah,
In this decision, yeah.
go ahead, Helen.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, the
Yeah.
one thing that I think that we're all like, I don't know where council is on this, is when we talk about the residency requirement. Where are we at on that? Are we,
It appears to me that there's enough flexibility in the language that, people that have some interest, a stakeholder interest can be included based on my reading of it. If you,
no, that's how I read, no, I'm seeing how I read it. What I'm asking is that that's like, when I start to think about the things that I want to look at, when I look at this resolution, I don't know that I'm bought into the idea that a non-resident should be serving on this. And where are we at as a council? Am I the only one who's feeling this way or seeing it this way? And that's just one of the things that I think we got to get over. Like that should be a hurdle that we can get over before we even look at the rest of the language in here.
It seems
to my
like we
mind.
would want to try to get a resident. And if in one of those categories, we're just not finding a resident, I think then it would be okay if we had somebody that was
Recommendation.
not, yeah. That's what I think.
And we talked about this quite a bit. The issue that we're going to run into is that there's probably one or two of these categories that are by definition not going to be a resident.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
By definition will not be a
But
resident.
who has to
Like
be by
who?
definition not a resident?
Commercial zone of a
Yep, could very well be someone who owns a short-term rental
Realtor.
company.
realtor.
One member from a commercial zone who is not the owner of a short-term rental. I don't know.
Or realtor that could be in Douglas.
We have business owners that live that have a commercial, Lauren has property in the commercial zone and she's a resident. And she doesn't own a short-term rental. I'm just saying, I'm not saying that she should, I'm just saying, we've got a person in this room who fits that. So I don't think it's fair to say we don't have anybody, I can point to someone right here.
Well,
So what else do we have? Go.
One member from the real estate realtor community with no short-term rental ownership.
Oh, that'll be tricky.
That would be my husband, but he's on two
How
boards,
about
so.
Gregory over here? He is in the real estate community and he is not, I don't believe you own a short-term rental.
No, I do not.
Are you in the real estate community?
No.
Yes, you are. You showed me your rental property. Look, I'm just saying, when we're doing that, the people at this table are fitting this bill, so I
No,
think
I
we should be
work-
able to find someone. from
I
every-
work in the rental industry. Part-time. I don't have my real estate license.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
You work for a realtor.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
so the preference, if I'm hearing all of us correctly, the preference is to find people that are resident in the let's just say the tri-community area, I mean.
I would have to say it would be my preference.
We probably, I'm not, this is hypothetical, but Cal, stop me, but this is hypothetical, but somebody from, a corporate entity in the Bay Area that wants to be part of this, we would probably not,
Right.
be as interested in them as somebody from Saugatuck or Douglas or the township.
Are we feeling a resident should be the priority?
I think so.
Is that
think
kind of
so.
where we're going
I
with
think
this?
residents should be the priority, but
Definitely.
we are a tri-community. We are highly interconnected. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
and there are people that have connections in
Yeah.
one way or another. By
Yeah.
history, by family, by business, by this, by that. And if there is an issue where you can't hit this
Uh-huh.
exactly,
I think it should be exception based if we do it,
Yeah.
and it shouldn't be part of the.
Can,
Outline.
it's not optimal.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, this is, we are making rules for this community.
Mhm.
And that,
no, I agree that, that's certainly the spirit of this.
Yeah.
The spirit of this is to, recognize the issues that we as a community are facing and what the voters have made very clear to us in our, and the residents have made clear to us in our community surveys and our strategic planning. So I think, are we all agreed that we can sort of let RC kind of run with this? Let us know how it's developing for Monday. Work with Kyle to make sure that it is compliant. Although, once again, I don't think we have a major issue since this group is only going to recommend, they're not going to be making policy. So-
Right, and Chris Patterson was at the meeting and spoke to exactly what we heard today. So there's two legal opinions, at least we've heard in, verbal, that there's no restrictions on just making it, you can have people outside of the
And-
residential.
And I'd like to echo your comment that this task force or committee, or however we're going to characterize it, their charge is to make recommendations to planning, who brings something to council, things that we are going to take into account along with whatever we receive from our professional planning,
Precisely.
urban planners.
Precisely.
And so I can get behind where I was not excited about this is if they were going to be bringing policy. If we're going to do it in this manner, then that makes more sense to me.
Okay. Yeah, so I think we've reached consensus. I mean, we all recognize the need to move quickly on this, populating this group and getting them up and running, is top priority. So I think I'm just looking for kind of a nod that we are ready to, with some tweaks to the language, with help from legal counsel, that we'll be in a position to act on this on Monday.
I will want to read it
Good.
and tweak language before Monday's meeting.
Okay,
Yes.
and so if I could just ask you all to kind of keep close tabs on your email, and Ryan, if you've done a great job in keeping the council informed as you guys move through this, if you could just kind of keep us informed on the various red lines that are coming in, so everybody kind of knows and nothing kind of is a surprise on Monday. I would really like to move forward on this on Monday if I can get a nod from everybody. Ryan, you as well.
Yeah, just a question with the red line. I mean, I think from a staff perspective, we would collapse, we'd take in the input, we're gonna collapse it into one document. I don't think we'd be in a position to send out
Okay,
like a play-by-play as we get updates from
Okay,
the city
fair.
council members.
fair.
Yeah, that could go.
All right.
Yeah, I could
fair.
go on for a while.
Well, then,
Right.
then maybe just a synopsis of any substantive changes
Yeah.
I hope we've all read this already
Yeah.
and we'll be able to catch anything, but I want to make sure everybody's comfortable, because I really would like to move on this on Monday.
Yes.
Okay.
And let me check with my colleague RC, but the way I would envision this is just a one pager with all the bullet points that we receive that we'd use as a cover page. And you can insert that. Any points that were made from council members after you think about this a little bit more
I'm
on
comfortable.
Monday.
I'm comfortable with that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's challenging to do like a red line change ahead of time in that I don't know, for example, if Mr. Gardner sends me a change that the rest of you will agree with it, or if
Right,
Mr.
right.
Dempsey sends something that so if I include the change and then not everybody, we can certainly summarize exactly where each of you stand, and then we still would have to make those changes on Monday, but we can definitely do that. And we got to be careful with as staff, obviously sharing, all their members feedback outside of an open meeting kind of a thing. So.
No, it's a fair point. As someone that writes corporate comms for a living, I can sympathize. So, I think we're good. I
Yeah,
think we're
and just
good.
one other point, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
All of the brilliant ideas need to be submitted by end of day tomorrow to get it in the packet for Monday.
End of day tomorrow.
Oh. Oh.
Preferably sooner than end of day.
Noon tomorrow?
Yeah, noon tomorrow would be great. 2 p.m.
There's
by
no
the
way I can get
latest.
this done by noon tomorrow. There's just not.
Noon Thursday or noon Friday?
Thursday, but
Okay.
Friday's fine.
End of day
I
Thursday.
got on Friday. I'll do it.
Jamie, that's very kind of you. If you could give us this bit of grace period to do it.
Friday, I'll put it out.
Ryan, are you okay with that? I would really like to move this quickly.
Don't worry about it.
Okay,
We'll
yeah, we got
figure it
Are we
this.
good?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Jamie.
out. Yeah, it's okay.
Thank you.
So what was the
We
agreement
got
then?
this,
What's the
right?
timing that we agreed to?
Friday at noon.
Friday at noon. Okay.
End of day Thursday with your,
End of day Thursday.
your
I have a
points.
question.
End of day Thursday.
End of day Thursday, so I get out by noon on Friday.
Sorry.
And that's
Sorry.
just changes to the resolution, correct?
Any-
If there's
yeah.
anything
Anything
that
that
just
you-
doesn't seem right about the resolution, about forming the committee.
Right. If
Right.
council members have. proposed
Sorry, team. Hate
changes,
to
we'll-
crack the whip on this one.
As
but-
far as I'm understanding, we all agree that it's the, making residents a priority for these positions. Is there anything else that, or you just wanted more time?
I want to look at it again
Okay.
because I think, I want to look at it again to talk.
I think
about
that was the
what
most
kind of-
substantive
That's-
issue that we.
That's definitely,
discussed.
that's why I wanted to clear that.
Right,
Substantive
sure.
was going to be
Yeah.
that. And
Yep.
other than that, I'm going to want to look at it.
Okay.
So
I would like to have more than a
apologize,
day to
I
do it,
apologize
but-
for being a whip cracker on this one, but I really do want us to get this going because I mean, getting these people in for interviews and stuff is.
One thing I'm not gonna do is stop it. So yes.
All right, thanks.
Mr. Mayor,
Full steam.
Go ahead.
entertain any other thoughts that come up over the weekend on Monday, at Monday night's meeting.
Okay, yeah. I mean, if we didn't, yeah, I would like to have it as baked as possible by Monday, but yes. Okay, great. So thank you. I appreciate all of you doing this bit of homework for us. Thank you.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you. Okay. Very good. That is the task force. I think we're at 6D, Kalamazoo Harbor Authority, page 24. Our council rep's term on the Harbor Authority, Ken Trester, former mayor, former councilman, expired this month. I personally thanked Ken for his service. Ken was one of the first council members that I worked with when I became a council member, and I learned a lot from him. His service to the Harbor Authority has been great. And so that needs to be said right up front. I do think the best person at this table to represent us on the Harbor Authority is Lauren. I think more than anybody around this table, and as envious as I am, gets to spend more time on the water, spends more time interacting not only with our visitors, but our residents, our business owners that are involved in our harbor as a business. So I think Lauren is tailor-made to take the role as our city council's rep on the Harbor Authority with our sister communities.
Yeah.
So I will put that forward on Monday. Happy hearing discussion, but I really do think Lauren's well placed to serve us in that representation role. I think everybody seems to be
I
happy
think
about
we'd be
that.
lucky to have her.
Good. That's
Looking
how-
forward.
that's how I feel.
I appreciate the support.
Even though I didn't get a boat slip this.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
Oh, shoot. Sorry about
For
that.
some reason, the guy by the name of John Scher was #1 on the list, whereas I was the last on the list. I'm not sure how. I'm just glad of our very transparent and fair process. Thank you, city clerk. I'm very grateful.
You're a lottery winner.
I'm very grateful for you playing it straight 100%. Thank you so much. All right, so on to 6E.
With no bitterness.
No bitterness whatsoever. No, I am not bitter. I'm very fair. No special privileges for anyone. 6E, Planning Commission Activity Report for 2022. That's on page 25. Ryan, you gonna jump into this one real quick? And then we'll kick it over to the Planning Commission members.
Thank you, Mayor. The Enabling Act requires that that the Planning Commission provide a kind of a summary of its activities for the year to the legislative body, which is you. So I took the same format that's been used in prior years. If there's a preference to provide you with information differently, we certainly are welcome to feedback on that. But I thought there was some interesting kind of historical data related to past permitting. And it's just kind of a summary of at a real high level of things that the Planning Commission took a look at in 2022. And then the priorities that they set for 2023. So it's simply for information.
Great. Thank you very much. Steve's still on the lines. Chairman Mans, anything you'd like to add? Nope, there it comes.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I think that the summary that Ryan has put together really kind of highlights the activities that we had in 2022, but most importantly, kind of the priorities that we set for 2023, of which, as you can see, one of them being the short-term rental, we jumped on, started in December, and are trying to get it action taken on it as soon as possible. You know, the other things that we kind of have, looked at, for the 2023, one of the goals that we tried to look at with the Planning Commission was not only our regular meetings and looking at projects that come before us, but also trying to really think about the overall tri-community master plan and knowing that that will be up for a review within the next couple of years, and looking at parts of the other within the community of areas that we thought that proactively we could try to address, as opposed to always waiting to make actions only once something is kind of submitted for us to review. And so short-term rentals kind of fell into that. I think the other ones that we had kind of listed, like the waterfront development, consolidation of our number of zones, and we currently have like over 30 zones for a town of this size. do we really need all of those? Not saying we would actually recommend changes, but we need, we wanted as a group to kind of start to look at that and try to determine, is there a reason why we have, as many zones as what we do have? And then, the other things that were kind of listed there was the, a fee in lieu of parking, like if we had buildings, some communities have looked and said, well, if somebody's able to build, but they don't really have parking, can they pay a fee, which would allow us to then provide alternative parking or alternative arrangements. And then, of course, the Park Street, which I think, you, Mr. Mayor, have, kind of gone out and taken a look at, and we know that that's an issue, moving forward. And then, of course, the continuing ed. So it's the activities for the 2022, are all kind of highlighted in there. I really think that what we wanted to kind of focus on are the priorities that we were setting, where we wanted to be proactive in addition to doing our responsibilities of reviewing anything that comes before the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Steve. Council, any questions, discussion on this item?
No.
Not seeing any. Okay. Thank you, Ryan. That concludes our discussion items for this afternoon. That takes us to item 7, public comments. This is open to comment on any item. Would folks please limit their comments to 3 minutes? And as always, please identify yourself and place of residence. We've lost most of our audience here in the room. Anyone on the Zoom that would like to make public comment?
Hi, yes, this is Brian Elmore from 985 Ridgeview Lane. Just a couple of things. When you were looking at the Public Works map, it did appear that Ridgeview Lane was missing on the map. I don't know if that was intended to be a complete representation of every street. It's right off Maple, kind of below Singapore. It is a residential court, so I just didn't know if that was omitted for a reason. The other piece is around the short-term rentals. I do have a part-time home there, and we do rent our place out for the couple of months in the peak season, but the rest of the year, we are effectively a resident, but by nature of kind of where our job tax location is, we don't have official residence in the city of Saugatuck, but we have a significant stake, both as members of the community who enjoy the community that short-term rentals afford us, but also as a stakeholder of someone who does bring in short-term rental income. So just want to make sure when we're looking at the overall makeup of the committee, knowing that it's not actually enforcing the policy, but informing the policies the Planning Commission would be pushing forward. I would advocate that, people who do have a stake in it, whether it be a property owner, a rental, a business owner, et cetera, that they be considered for representation in that. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the comment. Any other hands raised in the Zoom? Not seeing any other folks unmuting or wishing to be identified. So with that, I will close our final public comment. Takes us to item 8, correspondence. We have some correspondence in the packet. And with that, we can move to item 9, council comments. Let's reverse order. I'll let you kick it off, Russ.
Thank you, Mayor. We'd like to announce that on Monday, March 6th, 2023 at 6 p.m., the Allegan County Sheriff Department and Saugatuck City Council members Lauren Stanton and Russ Gardner will be hosting a community meeting to interact, ask questions, and hear information and updates about policing in our town. This meeting is open to everyone in the community, residents or not, business owners, everybody's welcome, and will be held at Saugatuck High School, 401 Elizabeth Street. So the goal of this is to improve communication between residents and the officers who police our city. Many of you have probably heard from folks, I know I've heard from several people that their comments like, I don't know any of the police officers. What are they doing about speeding or school safety, or what are they getting to know the community? Some people are still not convinced that the shift from Saugatuck Police to Allegan was the right decision. Now that was what, 5 years ago? So the point being is we thought this was a good opportunity. I appreciate Lauren agreeing to, be a part of this, and Mike Larson, the Allegan County Undersheriff, is totally on board with this. So the idea here is just kind of get the message out and start talking with people, and this may hopefully maybe result in some other subsequent meetings, but just getting that started. So Monday, March 6th at 6 p.m. And I wish Saugatuck best in basketball. So if they're doing well, Lauren will not be able to be there personally, but anyway.
Yeah, I let Russ know that I probably wouldn't be able to be there because it's districts for Saugatuck basketball. So I'll probably be at my son's game. But that being said, it's important that, the community gets to know our police officers, our sheriff's deputies. That's a first step. A lot of times there are national night outs and different ways of getting to know our sheriff's deputies that serve our community. So any way we can do that, I fully support. Also, there is a fundraiser that I hope all y'all can attend. It is March 4th. It is a euchre tournament and it's all to raise funds for the Saugatuck Sports Boosters. And it's going to be at the Ivy House. So I can give you guys information on all of that, but it's going to be a really fun event. Ivy House has donated their space to have it there, which is fantastic. They're new to our community. And it's going to raise, to be able to get new uniforms for our kids.
Thanks, Lauren. Holly?
Nothing at this time. I just would say that I thought this was a very effective workshop and I want to thank the staff in particular. I really thought y'all did an excellent job and thank you.
I want to thank our engineering company and Scott as well, and maybe shadow what they said about being a part of the roads program and what our priority should be to get these roads worked on. I appreciate the plan. I'll put together very well. But it's nice to see us getting into motion of doing something we've been talking about for the last couple of years around this town, and to see that we're actually getting some work done on these roads. So I'm really happy about that. Also want to let everybody know that the Book Nook, who was there in the old hardware store, will be moving, and we're very happy about that. She was looking for a place to move to, and she'll be in the Motif building on Butler Street. That's was Khan's business. We all remember Khan, who passed away a couple of years ago, men's clothing store, and right next to Jeff Blandford Gallery. So she's planning on opening there the 1st of April. She'll be moving throughout the month of March. So that's one of our favorite stores, a lot of locals' favorite stores. She's very, very popular there at the bookstore. I see almost the whole neighborhood in there. So we're happy that she was able to find another spot here downtown. So
I think I'm good on comments for the day. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. Once again, I'd like to thank city staff for really coming prepared and really leading us through what I think was a very productive workshop, as Lauren said. And I'd also like to thank all of you, for serving. I mean, this is a lot of homework for all of us on some really sticky, thorny issues. And so I just want to thank each and every one of you for your commitment to do the work and to have a bias for action. I really appreciate the urgency, which this council operates under, and thank you for your patience with us as we chomp at the bit to get things done, Ryan and staff. So thank you all. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Gardner, second Baldwin, all in favor? Please say
Aye.
yes.
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 Meeting adjourned.
Thanks.
Yes.
I